when you are an aspiring entrepreneur, it's your job is to align with the who's that can help you. And a lot of times we're looking for the answer, the what, the system, the process, the application, the technology, the shortcut. And what we really need to go find are the who's, the right relationships, and align with them, because that's what's going to make all the difference. And here's the thing. When you align with the right relationship, you don't go in asking for help. You go in asking to help.
Hello, my beautiful friends. Today we have the honor to be joined by Mike McCarthy in the Mastermind. Mike is one of the co-founders of GoBundance, author of the recently released book, Tribe of Millionaires, a serial entrepreneur, a speaker, as well as the regional owner of the Keller Williams Greater Pennsylvania region, which oversees 50 offices and 8.5 thousand agents, and closed over 52,000 units in 2018, totaling $14 billion in revenue, which is an astronomical number. Mike co-founded GoBundance in an effort to build a quality peer group of other successful men who could hold one another accountable to their own high standards, who choose to live life at the peak. Since its official founding in 2013, the GoBundance tribe has grown to nearly 200 members who connect at seasonal tribal gatherings and annual international bucket list trips. You guys probably remember hearing about GoBundance from some of our past guests, including Tim Rode and Rock Thomas, but just a great group of guys, and we always have great conversations with anybody who's tied to the GoBundance group. So, Mike, welcome to the show, brother. Oh, Mike, I think you might be muted.
Sorry. Hey, Brad, thanks. Sorry, I thought I hit the unmute and I missed it. So great to be here, buddy.
No worries. I do that all the time. But like I said in the intro, a lot of the listeners of this show, especially longtime listeners, have heard GoBundance come up a few times with some of those former guests who have played a pivotal role in the organization. And I don't know that we've ever actually covered the origin story of the group. So I would love if you would just dive into some of those early days of GoBundance and what those times were like and why you guys decided to get this group together.
Yeah, thanks, Brad. Well, it's really funny because we never set out to start a mastermind group. We were just a couple of guys that were hanging out. In fact, it started with just Pat Hyben and David Osborne becoming accountability partners. And they were accountability partners for quite a while. And they built upon it from the accountability and from just two guys. And they invited Tim Rode into the mix. And I came onto the scene as what we now call the fourth Amigo, because for many years, about 4 or 5 years, it was just Pat, Tim, and David holding each other accountable. And they were going on adventure trips and going over their goals, and they were competing on everything from how many hours worked to how much passive income to how little they could work. The whole gambit of evolution of being a young hustler to becoming successful and then coming on the other side. And I came on the scene kind of as the mentee, the young, not yet a millionaire, still struggling and striving in my businesses. And they were just like these prolific guys that I was just so happy to get a chance to be around them. The reason I got to be around them is because I was adventurous and I climb a lot of 14ers and do a lot of outdoorsy type stuff. And I was actually training to climb Kilimanjaro, and Pat and David and Tim asked if they could join us on that trip with another coaching group. So they came along for that trip. And we noticed that we were wanting to go at a different speed than everybody else that was along with us on that trip. And that's kind of when we decided we were just going to do our own trips with the 4 or 5 of us, and that we would just invite 1 or 2 other guys that we knew on the trip. And that became our guys trip that we were doing every year. And so we didn't actually set out for it to be a men's mastermind group. It was just buddies hanging out. And if you could imagine early on, it would have been pretty awkward if we were like, and we're going to bring these 3 badass entrepreneurial chicks with us too. It would have just been weird because it was just a guys trip. And I think it's worth mentioning that fast forward to today, we actually have 40 women who are members of GoBundance. They have a women's tribe. But that's probably a story for another time. But in the beginning, it was just a men's group, and we were just doing trips with like 8, 9, 10 guys. We did one big trip in Steamboat in 2012 at David Osborne's house with 16 guys. And that was the first time we called it GoBundance. And that later that year, we took 12 guys to Norway on an international bucket list trip. It was 10 days of awesomeness. Rock Thomas and Tim Rode and I and David were all there. And we decided that we were going to do a big event in Tahoe, and we were all going to bring as many guys as we could to this big event. Finally, we were kind of going to go to a larger scale. So we ended up getting 45 guys to come to that event in Tahoe in 2013. And during the event, we decided we were going to start selling memberships to some shit we didn't even know what we were selling to yet. We just knew we had something that needed resources. It needed support. And if we could enable it to be more of an organization through membership, we knew that it could maybe become something. And we didn't know what it would become. We thought it might be a small group. It might be a big group. And now it's exceeded all of our wildest expectations and where we are today. So it's been a wild ride from the beginning of that to just a couple of guys going on trips to where we are now with actually over 200 members just in the elite division alone. And then you have Rock with M1 and spun off into another couple hundred members. And you have the nonprofit One Life community that Tim Rode leads, and you really have this solar system of organizations that are really trying to serve the planet and make the world a better place to be.
Yeah, it's super cool how that worked out, and just the circumstances bringing you guys together. But I imagine in those early days, yes, you could keep pace with those guys, or maybe they were keeping pace with you, but that there was something about you that they were drawn to that, allowed you to take on that mentee type role, and that really attracted them to also, helping out and you guys connecting in such a deep level. Is there anything that you can think of or that you recall that allowed you to set yourself apart in their eyes to the point where, they're like, Mike's awesome. Let's bring him in. Let's make him the fourth Amigo and really kick ass with this thing.
Yeah, well, that's a really great question. I think there's two parts to it. The first part is like my personal journey. And then the other part is thinking about just advice to anybody who wants to become mentored by people, right? And so for me, I didn't become the fourth Amigo until a couple of years ago when I emerged as the clear leader, one of the clear leaders of the tribe. And they made me a partner early on, but it was a very small partner. It was like, you just happen to be around and we think you're going to do some shit. So we're just going to give you a little tiny piece of whatever this was. And at the time I was kind of pissed off. I was like, these guys don't understand. I'm going to bring so much value and whatever. But from that point forward, I was like, you know what? It is what it is. At least I was a part of it. I got to be I'm an elder. I get seen as a leader in this group of men. How cool is that? And I kind of settled into that. And Rock Thomas took the lead of the organization for the first 2 or 3 years. And then when he spun it off into M1, I stepped up, and we had just come back from a trip to Peru. And I was blown away because I came back from that trip and I was like, if I got nothing else out of GoBundance ever again, it would have been the greatest decision of my life to like hang out with these guys. And I looked at my life. I had a wife, 2 beautiful kids, an amazing home, a beautiful business that was thriving. And I looked at it all and I'm like, I wouldn't have this stuff without Pat, Tim, and David in GoBundance, without their guidance, their leadership, their mentorship. So in that moment, I decided that I was going to take over as CEO for Rock as he went into M1. And I stepped up, and that was a moment where I was like, I'm all in. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do it because 2 main reasons. One, I wanted to make Pat, Tim, and David proud. Like these guys had helped me so much, and I wanted to make them proud. I wanted to be a good steward of the organization that we'd created together. And I also wanted to make sure, Brad, that other entrepreneurs were going to get to have the same experience that I had. And I kind of knew that if we didn't really find some more leadership for the group at that time, that it wasn't going to become all it could be. So I stepped up and jumped in. And for the last 4 years, I led GoBundance as the CEO. And now I'm stepping back from that. And Dirk Van Reenen is stepping in. And I'm stepping over to be the CEO of FamBundance, because we're rolling out full programs for families, couples, kids, and teens, so that our whole entire ecosystem is served. But that was a really long way of me saying, you earn the right to become the fourth Amigo because you emerge as someone who's done a lot of recruiting, a lot of influencing. I led a lot of events. I brought John Berghoff in to start leading our events. He totally helped us shift and change the future and direction of our entire tribe. And I continue to add amazing partners to our ecosphere in GoBundance. And that's how you earn the right to go from being mentee to peer and business partner. And I would say that the pathway for any of your listeners who are, you said this is a group, a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs, which I love. I love that energy. When you are an aspiring entrepreneur, your job is to align with the who's that can help you. And a lot of times we're looking for the answer, the what, the system, the process, the application, the technology, the shortcut. And what we really need to go find are the who's, the right relationships, and align with them, because that's what's going to make all the difference. And here's the thing. When you align with the right relationship, you don't go in asking for help. You go in asking to help. So you go in, you mentioned you were a volunteer. You helped out with Quantum Leap Mastermind with Berghoff earlier. Like, that's the kind of attitude that we like to see in individuals, is being there to show up and help. And I think when you do that in service, it changes the scope of the mentee-mentor relationship. And also, when you do get to the point where you've earned the right to ask for help or ask for some answers, being willing to go implement and actually do the things that they're telling you, because most people get asked to be mentored. They go to sit down with a mentee. The mentee talks all about themselves, doesn't ask the mentor anything. And then at the end of the whole exchange, the mentor might say, here's some things to do. And the mentee doesn't go do any of them. And so that's where I always end that relationship. And so I think Pat, Tim, and David appreciated that I actually did the things I said I was going to do, and that I kept listening to them and also asking about them, not just about how I could be successful, but about how they became successful and what drives them and what's important to them. I think that's the pathway.
Yeah, I love it. And I think one of the parts of that journey that really stuck out to me was how in the beginning you were handed the small piece of the pie, and at first you felt a little slated, but you set your ego aside and said, you know what, I'm just gonna go after this thing and put my all, give it my all, and put my energy into this to try to help make this organization better. And then look what becomes of that. I mean, the relationships that you build, even if that didn't end up leading to you becoming the CEO and running the organization and now FamBundance, bringing that type of energy just facilitates such a more powerful experience within the group. So I think that that's a really cool piece of it, that you had that attitude shift and you were able just to get after it. And obviously the results speak for themselves.
Yeah, and I earned more equity. It's worth noting that in the process, you end up getting what you deserve, right? I trusted that they would, and they did, and I went out and I earned it. So now I feel great about the partnership, the relationship, and not only where we got GoBundance to in that process, but where it grew me to stepping up. Because the moment I said I was going to do it, I instantly knew I had made a decision to trade some of my family's time for GoBundance time, and that I was making a sacrifice. And that's how FamBundance has emerged. Is I realized quickly I was going to bring them along for the journey. So, we started running events on the back end and front end of the GoBundance events for families. And, now we have a full family membership group that our members and other entrepreneurial families can join. So it all comes full circle, and I'm really happy for the opportunity. And now we get to keep giving that opportunity to other people.
Yeah, so this is an avenue that I didn't intend to explore in this conversation, but I can't help but take the bait. So my wife is 20 weeks pregnant, expecting our first. And as I'm now working on still the Millennial Mastermind podcast, but building the business associated with it while working a full-time job, it's something that time and sacrifice are words that are on the top of my mind and things that keep me up at night. So I would just love to get your perspective now that you mentioned you like to take your family along with you, but you also mentioned that there were sacrifices involved of when it comes to maintaining family relationships and being an all-star husband and dad and an entrepreneur and building businesses. What is your perspective on I don't know that there's a right way to go about it, but on how to go about that and successfully navigate those tricky waters?
Yeah, it's funny is that, even though I did bring my family along and they loved it, in the end, you realize that maybe I was dragging them along a little bit too. And so just this last year, we looked and realized that my daughter, who is 6, has never been on a family vacation with all of us. So as a family, the 4 of us have never been on an actual family vacation for 7 days that was just us. And the reason is because we were always bringing along other families with us and tying it to a GoBundance event or tying it to another personal development event or whatever. And so I share that so you realize that you can go, the middle way is always, the balanced way is always going to be the right way. And so even on that, even though it was a great idea in the beginning, you could go too far to one direction and find yourself out of balance. And we're always going to find ourselves out of balance. The question is, how quickly can you counterbalance and get yourself back in? And so I think it's an ebb and flow. But here are the rituals and the habits and the traditions that keep me in play with my family. Is number one is I continually save memories of my family on an app called Legacy of Love. A friend of mine developed it. I've been using it all year, but I am writing to my children once a week at least, along with a picture, a message capturing a moment of their life. And what this does is it forces me to be way more active and present in those moments and try to find them too. And then to remember them and then to write each morning or when I get a chance to actually catch up and go find the pictures and upload them. And so the ritual of like having to capture the moments and save them or savor them, save them to savor them, you could say, it forces me to actually be present in those moments more. So that's one hack that I use that's big. The other thing is that you always have to make sure you schedule your family time ahead of everything else, because if you do it in reverse, there's the Big Rock story. If you're a Covey fan, you can look that up and YouTube it. But we always got to get our big rocks in the container first, because we can fill the sand in around the bigger rocks, the little smaller things that don't matter as much. And the big rocks are things like family and health and your finances, like making sure that you're saving, budgeting, you're forming good credit and things like that. But there's certain things that really matter above all else, and just making sure those are in the calendar and scheduled first. So we have a weekly family meeting that we call a dream session, because kids don't want to go to some bullshit meeting, right? So we renamed it. They're on to us though, so kids are pretty smart. You'll figure that out real fast, Brad. But what we do as a family is we co-create our future together. And even since my daughter was as young as 3 years old, we've been using the same practices that John Berghoff teaches in his exchange method, which, we mentioned earlier in the audience. If they're lost on that, it's a friend of ours that you and I share. We mutually know a guy who teaches methods that help groups, teams, organizations, communities of all sizes come together and create their future. And I actually am a trained exchange facilitator in his methods, and we use those same methods to have an amazingly powerful meeting or dream session once a week. And in that session, we go over our family values and we point out where we've been living those family values and where other members of the family have been living those values. So we call out stories. We talk about why we're grateful for each other. We go over our big goals that we're working on. We go over our weekly goals that are attached to the bigger goals. We go over our weekly schedule to see where everyone's going to be over the next week and what's going on. We go over our family goals that we have together that are our collective goals. And then we look at our future big moments that we're going to get to celebrate together that are coming up. And then we have a countdown timer in the house. That's the countdown to the next big vacation or big party or big event that's coming in the family. So we build anticipation towards that. And one of those events every month is a board of what they call a family board meeting developed by my friend Jim Shields. And what that is it's one-on-one time with a child, and they get to choose the agenda. And no electronics. It's just you and your kid one-on-one for 4 hours. So once a month, my wife and I switch. I'll take my son one month and then the next month my daughter, and vice versa. And so no matter what, they're going to get 4 hours with mom or dad once a month. And then we do family dinners together. We always are trying to eat dinner together. We do family hugs. But you just put your family at the center of your life, buddy. That's all you have to do. And you let everything else revolve around that and you'll be fine. What happens is that what most people do, or what a lot of hustlers and entrepreneurs have cleverly done, is they've found a way to run this hallucination in their life where they put their family on the outside and they put the business in the center, and they use their family as the excuse for why they're focusing so much on what's most important to them, which is the business. And so they build up this business. And if they're really good at that, they build up this amazing business that creates a lot of wealth and a lot of responsibility that then in turn, these children are not equipped to handle because they didn't get any time with the person that built it. So they're not sharing values with the person who created the wealth. They're not learning from them. Then they end up inheriting some large sum of money or wealth or whatever, and they either squander it and they feel horrible about it, or they're just scared shitless by it and they don't know what to do. So putting your family at the center and making sure everything else revolves around it is the only way to go. And I really think that it's what's broken in our world right now, in our Western society, if you will, not to get like a spiritual or philosophical, but I think at the core, we have families that don't come together and create the future together and share meaningful moments and lift each other up. And they don't celebrate and operate off of a set of values that gets passed from generation to generation. We've lost that in technology and modern day. And it's just something we have to get back to. So anyways, that was a long ass answer.
No, I love that. And you're so right when you talk about this facade that you're building, or this excuse, quote unquote, that people are using, that they're building their business for their family and support their family. But I think you can go down that without even realizing it yourself, and tell yourself the lie that's why you're doing it if you're not careful. So I was taking a lot of notes there, and I'll be probably listening to this episode again as I get into it. But I really appreciate you sharing that. And I also want to make sure that we take some time to talk about, you wrote a new book. I mentioned in the intro, Tribe of Millionaires. So let's talk a little bit about that. Why'd you write that book, and what's that all about?
Yeah, so we decided to write the book because for a long time, we organically just let GoBundance grow at whatever level it would grow. In fact, as the CEO, my sales approach was that someone was either a hell yes or a hell no. And they would know within the first 20 or 30 minutes of hearing about GoBundance if it was for them or not. They either wanted to be around hard chargers doing epic shit and being challenged and being called to go to their next level of potential in a real authentic space, or they didn't. And it was pretty clear those who wanted that and those who didn't. And so our whole approach was, if you knew someone in the tribe and you got referred in, or you somehow heard about GoBundance, like randomly on a podcast or whatever, we didn't go out actively trying to promote it. But if you did, and we put you through an app process and you were a hell yes, then you could join. And so we grew organically for a really long time. And that was a beautiful way to go. And we were really sort of this compartmentalized big secret that had a lot of great tools and resources. And as we grew and grew, we gathered more resources, more tools, and better understanding too of just how powerful the group of people that you choose to surround yourself with is in our lives. And the book that we wrote is a parable. It's a business book that teaches lessons, but it's also a story that is much like the story that I experienced as a member or as an individual within GoBundance. And it's an echoing of many of the stories that have been experienced. And it all teaches and reveals through this story the lesson of the 6 effects that people will have on your life that we subtly and in powerful ways may not understand or comprehend the way that it's impacting our life. So we wrote the book. We're teaching the effects, and we did it in the form of a story because we just believe that, to my point about living values in families and sharing the stories and passing values down, is that, stories are the original way that we communicated and learned in tribes and groups of people. And so that story format to us makes it a business book that you're going to want to finish, because it's more like binge watching some Netflix shows than it is digesting a business book. Because you want to know what happens to Ethan next in the story as he's discovering the tribe of millionaires. And of course, the tribe of millionaires in the book is fictional, but in real life, the tribe of millionaires is GoBundance. And many of the tools and experiences that Ethan has, those are real life things that we do as part of GoBundance. So it was really a cool way, Brad, for us to start honoring that GoBundance is a company built around the idea of going towards abundance. And what that meant was that we should really see what this message of living in abundance and surrounding yourself with the right people, we should see how far it can carry. Because we have a duty and we feel kind of as if we're stewards of this organization called GoBundance that kind of created it itself, or we collectively did. But we feel a responsibility to see what this teenager can grow up and become once it spreads its wings. So we've brought in Dirk and Van Reenen, and we've upped our level of support and membership and things we're doing, and we're starting to scale some stuff to see what's possible, and we'll let it go as far as it wants to go. But for now, we're just celebrating that 7 years of hard work is kind of encapsulated in these short this short story. So it's fun to get to be in the world sharing it, because it's been kind of a secret for 7 years.
Yeah, I'm excited to dive into it, and I've seen the title flashing across my Instagram with people like Hal Elrod and different folks who I follow and who have been on the show, posting stuff about it. So it's definitely grabbed the attention of myself and definitely some high level folks. One question that I love to ask is to step into the time machine, and if you could go back and talk to yourself maybe just before you did that climb with the original 3 Amigos, right before or that first time you guys all really met and got together, based on all of this experience in the entrepreneurial world with GoBundance and everything that you've learned over the last couple of years, is there one piece of advice that you go back and give to young Mike, who was, just still figuring it out back then?
I mean, I think, I wouldn't change anything. So I just think it's worth leading with that thought that I think it's unfolded in a way that is more miraculous and amazing and beautiful than anything I could have dreamt up. And so to think about changing it at all kind of makes me like a little uncomfortable. Not uncomfortable, but I'm like, I love it the way it is. I don't want to change it.
Yeah.
So I actually wouldn't want to say anything that would maybe alter the experience. But what I would share with myself at any other age, being younger, is I would keep reminding myself to follow my heart and to remember that, if we live our life from our analytical brain and our reactive nature, and we operate from our programming, which all of us do most of the time, if we don't step outside of that, then our whole experience of our being is being limited by this governor called our mind. And it's holding back everything. And really our heart is willing to live life and be fully expressed. But our mind gets in the way. So my advice would always be to follow your heart, to open in every moment to the possibilities and the miracles that are all around us that we just shut down and we stop paying attention to. The fact that we can even be in a body powered by this wisdom that has organs and cells and body parts that know what to do, whether we even tell them to do it or not. And that we get to go and have these experiences where I have children and I have businesses and I get to live in a world where I can climb mountains and swim in lakes. And it's just a beautiful experience of life. And I think our mind tends to shut all of that out and focus on what's wrong, what's broken, what's missing. And I think we need to shift away from that as a culture, as a society, and start finding the good in each other. And the way we do that is by following what's inside of our hearts, because it's the truth and it's love and it's wisdom.
I think that's a beautiful piece of advice to yourself. And I do want to give listeners maybe something tactical that they can do to reflect on that or start living that way. So is there any advice that you'd have for people to be able to make that shift? Is it meditating more? Are there any practices or anything like that you might be able to have people go out and be able to practice that shift?
Well, I mean, I was, for me, it was meditation. It was doing a guided meditation, and it was doing the same one over and over again, 7 minutes a day for many years. And before I started that journey, I had a little bit of success, got cocky, and got fat and overweight and unhealthy. And I weighed 195 pounds. I'm 150 today. I went backpacking a few months ago, and my backpack was 45 pounds, which would have been the equivalent to the weight that I lost. And so it was a real, mind bender of like, hey, at one point you were out of shape, didn't meditate, didn't have a whole lot going on other than you were ambitious to make money. And so I started to really peel back the layers of the onion, if you will, and reveal that being a regional director for Keller Williams was just a title. It wasn't who I was. It was an identity that I was perpetuating that was unfulfilling because it wasn't the real me. And it was through meditation of like being willing to sit and find myself over and over again every morning, and to be with myself. That is, to me, been the greatest life hack for me. And it just led to me taking better care of myself holistically, physically, nutritionally, and making better decisions, which led me also to getting around the right people. So I could have done the meditation and started working out, but I would have still been a very lonely person without a lot of purpose and connection. Finding a wife who, quite frankly, married me before I had figured out who I was and what was going on is a beautiful miracle. and actually having a mentor like David Osborne and the three Amigos early in my career, like those things all came because I was finally willing enough to go out and say, hey, I don't have it all figured out. Like I don't have all of the answers, and I need people to help me. I think that was a big turning point. So yeah, you can meditate, get clear, get aware, but ultimately you have to be willing to go out into the world and ask for help.
It's beautiful. I think that's a great place to start wrapping up, and some great tactical advice for people to start, making that shift if that sounds like something that they need in their own lives. So Mike, where can people check out the book, find more information about you if they want to learn more about GoBundance or anything like that online? Any places you'd point them?
Yeah, they can go to tribeofmillionaires.com, and it's a cool website that they can access a tribal strength assessment. If you want to find out how strong is the tribe that you're currently running with and supporting your goals, we've got a easy way for you to figure that out. Also, you can get a free copy of the book. You just pay shipping, and we send you a paperback copy if you go to tribeofmillionaires.com. If you think maybe you're ready to experience GoBundance, if you're an accredited investor or getting close to that level of success and you're ready to come hang with the true tribe of millionaires, GoBundance.com has a list of all of our upcoming events. Aspen 2020 is our next big event. It's right after the X Games, so a lot of us are going to go to the X Games first. And it's January 27th to the 31st of January. So that would be the next opportunity to come and hang with the real tribe of millionaires. And if you are looking to help pour into your family, you're ready to make your family the centerpiece of your life and start focusing on your family the way you might your business, then check out fambundance.com, because we're offering a family membership right now, and also events that we do for junior dream leaders, kids under 11, and next gen leaders, kids over 11, as well as our spouses and partners. We have trips, events, accountability groups, and circles that they work in. And so check us out in those places. And it's been a pleasure to be on here with you, Brad. Thanks.
Super cool. Mike, thank you for your time. This has been an awesome conversation. I appreciate you sharing everything that you have and being here to join us today. Thank you.
Of course.
Hey friends, I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you did, would you mind doing me an enormous favor? Could you drop a quick rating or review right there in your Apple Podcasts app on your phone? It helps so much in growing the show and helping more people find it. And when more people listen, we get better guests to come teach us cool stuff. It would mean the absolute world to me. Thank you so much, and we will see you next week.